Well, this is our third week in a row out of the Gospel of Mark, where there's kind of a difficult reading to take literally. The idea that kind of when you hear this, what you need to do is go home and sell everything, give your possessions to the poor, and follow Jesus. Dependent apparently on other people to feed you and clothe you and house you because you gave everything away. Doesn't really seem entirely practical. I actually do know someone, I have a friend who did do this. She gave away everything she owned. She was getting ready to go overseas to the mission field. She was a missionary and she went to China. So in some ways that kind of made sense for her to do that. She did it a second time, and I'm not sure of the circumstances of the second time, but I think it's probably easier to do when you're young, maybe, don't you think? Anyway, currently she is in her 40s and she is married and she owns a home and has a lot of things again. So, I guess if you're really going to do this, I don't know, you have to keep doing it, but it doesn't seem like it would really work with every Christian did this. So what does it mean? How do we take it? If it's not at face value, I mean, Jesus isn't just talking about the rich young man. He's saying, for anyone, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. And maybe we're all kind of going, well, I know a lot of people a lot richer than I am, so maybe I'm okay. And I do. But I also know that there are way, way many more people in this world who are not as rich as I am. So what do you do with it? There was a thing, I think Michelle was talking about this at Bible study, there was a thing going around at some point, the story that the eye of the needle is actually the name of the gate in the entrance to Jerusalem, and there's some way that it lowers or raises. It's hard for a camel to go through, but they can. Well, that's all made up. There is no such thing. There's no gate going into Jerusalem called the Eye of the Needle. So all through the ages, people have been trying to explain this one away. And I'm probably no exception. But I want to say a couple things about it, and then I want to tell a story. So the things are that, for me, and this came up in Bible study too, but I often wonder about this rich young man. And I love how it says Jesus loved him, right? Because I'm ready to sort of think of him as arrogant or full of himself, especially when he says, oh yeah, I keep all the commandments, no problem. I'm sure I do that with confidence, right? But Jesus loved him. And I think that's the only place in the Gospel of Mark where it says that Jesus loved somebody. I mean, it's a big deal. And it makes me kind of love him too, and think the best of him. And I wonder if when he went away, he started thinking about it more. I mean, I think that encounter with Jesus had to have changed his life. And maybe he even went away and thought about it, and then was able to do that, what Jesus wanted, and to follow Jesus. Or maybe it impacted him, it had to have impacted him in some way. And every time this comes up, and whenever I read it, it impacts me too. And no, I'm not planning to go home and sell everything and give everything to the poor. But it does make me think about what I have and what I can do with what I have. It makes me more generous. It makes me more inclined to make a generous gift for something I care about. It makes me more inclined to share what I have. So, it's not practical maybe to give everything away, but we can probably give more than we do, maybe. And it also makes me wonder what other things are keeping me from following Jesus. What other things are in the way? Are there resentments that I'm hanging on to? Are there fears that I'm hanging on to? Are there other things that are keeping me from fully following Jesus? And I think that's an important question to ask. So now the story, and it's kind of connected with this, and it's kind of connected with where we are in the world today. But the story goes like this. There was a monastery, and it was in a beautiful, secluded place in the mountains. It It was just very scenic and lovely, but it had come on hard times. There was a time when it was flourishing and people in the nearby communities would come and seek spiritual guidance and come and enjoy the grounds and take part in the beauty of creation that was there. But years had gone by and it had dwindled. There were only 6 people who still lived there. There were 5 brothers and the father abbot. And they were all elderly, and they were not living in harmony. They were griping, they were arguing and kind of at each other. They were not living a very harmonious life at all. And they were worried, and the abbot was worried. What is going to become of this place? And what is going to become of us? Because, you know, what happens when we get older? Eventually, we're all going to be gone, and then what? And furthermore, it's just not pleasant to be here. We're going through the motions of prayer, but it doesn't seem like we are living faithfully. And the abbot prayed, and he wondered what to do, and he tried this and that, and nothing worked. They were just not happy with one another. And so the abbot went to see his friend, who was a rabbi. They were good friends. They didn't see each other often because they did not live nearby, but he made the journey, and he went to see his friend. And he decided to share with him what was going on, and to share his concern and his worry and his exasperation, really. And he explained the situation, and he said, can you help me? Do you have any advice? What can I do? And the rabbi said, I don't have any advice, I'm sorry, but I do have something I can tell you, because I received a vision of your community, and I can tell you with certainty that in your place, the Messiah resides. The Messiah is there, disguised in human form, but the Messiah is living among you. The abbot was stunned, because as he went through the catalog, I mean, he knew he himself was not perfect, and he thought about all of the monks, and they sure didn't seem like the Messiah. He said, are you sure? This doesn't seem possible. He said, yes, I am absolutely certain. So the abbot went back to the community, and he called all the brothers together, and he said, I have some news. It's kind of surprising, and I'm not sure what to make of it, but I have been told with certainty that the Messiah is among us. One of us is the Christ. And they also were stunned, and they started thinking about it, and they kind of went through the catalog, and they were each thinking, well, golly, Brother Thomas is so cranky. I don't think it could be him, but on the other hand, I noticed that if anybody needs anything, he's right there to help. And Brother Anthony is kind of lazy. And I'm so exasperated because he's not putting in his fair share. But I also noticed that if somebody is sick, Anthony is the one who is there and has the gift of healing. Maybe it's Anthony. And one is not pitching in, but then you remember, well, he's working the gardens. And he's producing this amazing produce that we get to enjoy. And they went through, and things kind of started to change, because each one realized that if they didn't know who it was, they better treat each one as if they were the Messiah. And they started to let go of the grudges and the resentments and the hurts that they had cataloged, and they started focusing on what was the good. Could this be the Messiah? And they started treating one another with love and respect, because they better to be safe than sorry, right? If it's this person, I need to honor them. And it changed the dynamic in the place. And people would come, and now, instead of just coming and going back away, they would see something special happening. And they would stick around, and they would seek spiritual guidance, and they would enjoy the beauty of the place. And others came, and new people even came and said, I want to be a part of this. This is amazing. I can see how you are. I want to be a part of this. And the order flourished, and new people came, and everything changed. And I tell that story partly because of the way the story of the rich young man makes me think about a certain issue, which is what I have and what I do with my possessions and my wealth and what I have. But I also thought of this because I think for a lot of us right now, in this moment in our history and our world, a lot of us might be having some anxiety about an election coming up. Some of us might be thinking a lot about what's going to happen. And I also know that when the time comes when we find out what the results of the election are, there are going to be people in this room, no matter what happens, there will be people in this room who are relieved and even ecstatic or triumphant or happy or just glad. And there will be people in this room, no matter what happens, who are terrified, in despair, so sad and worried. And I think, that is true not just in this building, but of course in all of our lives, and wherever we go. That is the case. And if we could take some of that recognition that each one of us is made in the image of God, each one of us carries Christ, and that if we treat each other with that respect, and even the candidates, even the wider world, if we treat everyone with that respect, what would that do? And I'm not saying don't educate yourself, don't make a decision based on what you believe to be faithful. I think that is really important. But it's true that people of faith still come to different opinions about things. So I wonder if we might mull over that story, both the rich young man, but also this other parable of this monastery, and imagine how might it change our world if we behaved that way, if we really believed that Jesus was here and could be any of us. May we be able to do so. Amen.
Amen.